She started her day like any other, carrying a tray of freshly baked bread through the narrow streets of her town. The sun had not fully risen, and the air was still cool and crisp. People were just beginning to open their shops, and the smell of morning coffee mixed with the scent of flowers from small gardens along the path. She moved carefully, avoiding puddles from the previous night's rain. Life had been a struggle, but she had learned to find comfort in small routines. Each step she took was purposeful and measured, and her mind wandered to thoughts of the day ahead. He was walking down a different street, thinking about the day ahead and the weight of recent losses pressing on his shoulders. He had spent many nights awake, wondering how to move forward, and mornings like this felt heavy. The world felt ordinary, but somehow distant. He did not notice the people around him, and kept his eyes focused on the ground as he walked. Life had taught him harsh lessons, and he carried them quietly in the lines of his face and in the way he held his shoulders slightly hunched. Today, he had to take care of errands and meet a friend, but his thoughts lingered on the emptiness he felt. Their paths crossed at the corner, where a small coffee stand stood by the side of the street. She was placing her tray on a wooden table while he adjusted his coat to shield against the wind. Neither had expected the other to be there at that exact moment. She bent down slightly to move a small box out of the way, and he stepped forward at the same time to look at the menu of the stand. In that instant, her tray tilted slightly, and a few rolls slipped from the tray. Before either could react, they were both bending down instinctively to catch them. Their hands touched briefly, and they looked up at each other. There was a moment of awkwardness, followed by a small laugh. It was the kind of laugh that eased tension and felt genuine. Neither spoke much at first because words seemed unnecessary. It was a simple connection born from an ordinary accident. She smiled quietly and thanked him softly. He nodded and shrugged as if it were no trouble at all. She noticed the tired look in his eyes, but also something else, a hint of gentleness and patience. There was a pause before she straightened and continued arranging her bread. He lingered for a moment, watching her, without realizing it. Neither knew it yet, but something about that brief encounter had shifted the air around them. It was subtle, like the first notes of a melody that would grow into a song. Life had not made it easy for either of them, but in that moment there was a quiet understanding that neither could explain. The day continued, and they went their separate ways. She delivered bread to her regular customers and greeted them with a warmth that came naturally. Her mind kept drifting back to the stranger who had helped her. She did not know why she thought about him so much, but the memory of his kind eyes lingered. He too went about his errands with a part of his mind replaying the small moment of contact. He had expected nothing from life, but for some reason the image of her had stayed with him through the morning. It was a strange and gentle feeling he had not felt in a long time. Later in the day, they found themselves in the same small park. She had gone there to rest for a few minutes and enjoy the rare quiet. He had come there to sit on a bench and watch the world pass by. They did not speak immediately, but there was recognition in their eyes. This time there was no accident, no spilled bread, just a simple nod and a small smile. The air between them was lighter now, as if the universe had arranged their paths once more. They walked slowly along different paths, but close enough that they could hear each other's laughter at children playing nearby. It was strange and comforting all at once. Over the next few days, they began to see each other in small ways. At the corner stand, in the park, and sometimes in front of the shops, every encounter was brief but meaningful. He would ask about her day, and she would listen carefully to his words. There were no deep confessions yet, just small exchanges that began to build trust. The world felt less heavy in these moments. Their conversations were simple and natural, and they found comfort in this quiet companionship. Life had taught them both to be careful with their hearts, but still there was an undeniable pull drawing them closer. She noticed the little things about him, the way he smiled at children passing by, or the way he paused to help someone with directions. He noticed her kindness in subtle ways, the way she treated the shopkeepers with respect and remembered small details about their lives. It was in these small gestures that their connection grew. There was no rush and no pressure, only a quiet awareness that life had brought them together for a reason. Both had learned to move through the world cautiously and slowly, but with each encounter they began to imagine life could feel lighter. One evening, as the sun began to set, she was leaving the bakery, and he was standing outside the coffee stand. She hesitated for a moment before walking toward him. He greeted her with a warm smile that made her heart feel lighter. They talked for longer than before, sharing small stories from their day and laughing quietly at little accidents that had happened around them. Neither realized how much time had passed. The light faded and the stars began to appear in the sky. The world seemed vast yet intimate at the same time. For the first time in many months, he felt a sense of peace and hope. She felt the same quiet reassurance that comes from being with someone who seems to understand without words. Days turned into weeks, and these small meetings became a regular part of their lives. They began to anticipate seeing each other. The bakery and the coffee stand became markers of something more than daily chores. Life was still full of struggles, but they faced it with a shared sense of comfort. Even the ordinary tasks felt brighter. Each smile, each laugh, became a thread weaving them closer together. Neither had planned for this connection, but both knew it was important. It was a feeling that could not be ignored. The city moved around them with its usual noise and rhythm, but in these moments of simple connection, the world seemed to slow. They learned about patience and the beauty of small gestures. They did not yet speak of love or commitment, only of kindness and understanding. Yet in the quiet corners of their hearts, a seed had been planted. A seed that would grow slowly and surely, nourished by shared moments, trust, and gentle laughter. It was the beginning of a journey neither had expected, yet both felt drawn toward. And so the first chapter of their story ended not with drama or grand declarations, but with small, ordinary moments that felt extraordinary. It was in the spilled bread, the shared smiles, and quiet walks through the park that the foundation of something beautiful was laid. Life had been harsh, but it had also created a space where two people could find each other in the most unexpected way. It was a simple beginning, but it held the promise of something far greater waiting to unfold in the days ahead. The days passed quietly, and she began to notice small changes in herself. She looked forward to the brief moments when their paths would cross, and the small conversations that had become a part of her routine. Life was still filled with responsibilities and challenges. Yet these simple interactions gave her a sense of calm she had not felt in a long time. She carried her work carefully, spoke gently with customers, and walked through the streets with a little more lightness in her step. There was a growing warmth inside her, subtle but persistent, that made ordinary days feel brighter. He too noticed changes in himself. Mornings felt a little less heavy, and he found small reasons to smile. The memory of her laughter and the kindness in her eyes stayed with him throughout the day. Tasks that once felt tedious now had a little more meaning because he anticipated seeing her. He still carried his grief quietly, but these moments brought small relief and a sense of hope he had almost forgotten. The world had not changed much, but in the presence of someone who seemed to understand him, it felt more bearable. One afternoon they met at a small market near the park. She was buying vegetables for her family, and he was looking for some books at a small stall. Their eyes met across the crowded market, and she gave a small nod, which he returned with a gentle smile. He walked over slowly, and they began to talk about the simple things, the colors of the vegetables, smell of fresh bread, the little joys in life that often went unnoticed. It was an ordinary conversation, but it carried a quiet significance. They were learning to enjoy the presence of each other without needing anything more as they walked together through the market. A child ran past them and bumped into her basket, spilling some items onto the ground. He immediately bent down to help her pick them up. She laughed softly at the small chaos, and he smiled, feeling a gentle pride in being able to help. It was not a heroic moment or a grand gesture, just a shared experience that deepened their connection. She noticed the patience in him, and he noticed the kindness in her, small qualities that mattered more than anything else. They decided to sit on a bench nearby, watching people pass by. They spoke quietly about their days, their routines, and their little dreams. She shared stories of her family, the hard work she did to support them, and the little things that brought her joy. He listened carefully and in return spoke of memories he held dear, moments he missed, and the small efforts he made to move forward. There was no rush, no urgency, only a growing comfort in being understood. They found a rhythm in their conversations, a natural flow that felt effortless over the next few days. They met more frequently. Sometimes it was at the park, sometimes near the bakery, and sometimes simply in passing on the streets. Each encounter was brief but meaningful. They shared smiles, small talk, and quiet laughter. Slowly, they began to learn about each other's hopes and fears. She admired his quiet strength and the way he cared for others without expecting anything in return. He admired her resilience, her patience, and the gentle way she moved through life. These small details began to matter more than the grand gestures often celebrated in stories one evening. As the sky turned shades of orange and pink, they found themselves walking together along a quiet street. The air was cool and the sounds of the town felt distant. They spoke about simple things, favorite memories from childhood, the songs they liked, and the books they remembered fondly. Conversation flowed naturally, and pauses felt comfortable. He noticed how her eyes lit up when she spoke about something she loved, and she noticed the calm presence he carried even in silence. The world felt simple yet full of meaning in these moments. She began to feel a sense of trust growing. She shared small worries about her family, the challenges at work, and little disappointments she faced daily. He listened patiently and offered gentle words of support. He did not try to fix her problems, only acknowledged them and stood beside her in her thoughts. This simple act of being present strengthened their bond. For him, it was the same. He spoke about his efforts to move forward, the small steps he was taking to heal. In the quiet moments of reflection he cherished. She listened carefully, offering encouragement without judgment as weeks passed. They started to anticipate each other's presence. A glance across a crowded street or a brief wave felt like a quiet reassurance. Life continued to bring its challenges, but these moments of connection became a source of strength. They began to notice the small details about each other, the way one would tilt their head when thinking, the soft smile that appeared in moments of joy, the quiet gestures of care in daily routines. These observations were subtle, but they created a deeper understanding that did not need words one afternoon. A sudden rain began to fall while they were walking together. She hurried to find shelter under a small awning, and he joined her. They stood close, sharing the small space, and laughed quietly at being caught in the rain. The drops fell around them, and the world seemed to slow. They spoke less and simply enjoyed the moment together. It was not dramatic or planned, but it carried a quiet intimacy. Being together, even in silence, had become meaningful through these experiences. They began to share small secrets. Favorite songs, childhood memories, the little quirks that made them who they were. Trust grew naturally, like water soaking slowly into soil. Neither forced anything, neither demanded more than the other could give. The simplicity of being together without expectation created a safe space. Life had been harsh for both, but in each other's presence. They found a small refuge even when apart. They thought of each other. A glance at a passing street, the smell of fresh bread, or the sound of laughter could bring a memory to mind. It was a quiet awareness, a gentle pull that reminded them of the connection forming between them. They did not rush or speak of love yet. The feelings were subtle, growing slowly, anchored in understanding, trust, and shared moments. It was a kind of closeness that built steadily and could withstand the ordinary challenges of life. They began to find comfort in routine encounters, knowing that each small moment mattered. A morning greeting at the bakery, a brief conversation at the coffee stand, or a shared smile across the street became highlights of their day. Life was still filled with struggles, long hours of work, and responsibilities that demanded attention. Yet these shared moments made the world feel lighter and more vibrant. It was a quiet, steady connection that neither had expected, but both valued deeply one evening. As the town lights began to glow softly, they walked together through the streets, sharing observations about the changing season, the colors of the trees, and the small pleasures of the day. Conversation flowed naturally, and laughter came easily. They discovered common interests, similar tastes, and values that aligned. It was not grand or dramatic, but it created a foundation of familiarity and trust. Each step together strengthened their growing bond. In these weeks, they had begun to care for each other in small ways. He would notice when she looked tired and offer a quiet word of encouragement. She would observe when he seemed distant and asked gently if he was all right. These gestures were subtle but meaningful. They were learning the importance of presence, attention, and quiet support. Life had taught them to protect their hearts, yet they found themselves opening slowly, cautiously. To someone who seemed to understand them without judgment, the days became a series of simple, shared experiences. Visits to the market, walks in the park, and casual meetings in the streets formed a rhythm that neither had anticipated, but both had come to cherish. The ordinary moments were now infused with a sense of significance. They learned that love did not always arrive with grand gestures or dramatic declarations. Sometimes it began quietly in the unnoticed moments and grew steadily through presence, understanding, and shared life. And so the second part of their story continued. It was not marked by excitement or dramatic change, but by steady, meaningful connection. Each day brought small interactions, moments of trust, laughter, and quiet support. Life continued with its challenges, but the shared moments created a growing warmth, a promise that something beautiful was forming. The foundation of their connection had been laid, and it would continue to grow in the days to come. Life had a way of testing their quiet connection. As they grew closer, the challenges around them became more noticeable. She was carrying the weight of responsibilities at home and at work, and he was still facing the shadow of past losses. These pressures sometimes made it hard for them to fully enjoy the time they shared. Small misunderstandings began to appear. A word said in a rush or a look misunderstood could leave one feeling distant from the other. Neither wanted conflict, but life sometimes created moments that could not be avoided one afternoon. She arrived at the park hoping to see him. He was not there yet, and she waited on the bench, looking at people passing by and thinking of the small conversations they had shared. After a few minutes, he appeared but seemed distracted and distant. She tried to speak to him about her day, sharing a small story of her morning, but he responded with short answers. The warmth that usually filled their interactions was replaced by quiet tension. She felt a little hurt and unsure of what had changed. He was feeling overwhelmed by personal challenges and had not realized the effect it was having on his interactions with her. He had been carrying thoughts about his family and responsibilities, and they weighed heavily on him. He did not want to burden her or show weakness, so he spoke less and withdrew slightly. She noticed the change and felt a small sting, wondering if she had done something wrong. It was a moment of human imperfection, a reminder that even deep connections could face difficulty. The next few days were marked by brief encounters where they spoke politely but with caution. There was an unspoken distance that neither understood fully. She continued her routines, but noticed herself thinking about him more often, trying to understand what had caused the sudden change. He continued his errands but could not ignore the quiet emptiness left by her absence. Both realized that life could be complicated, and even small misunderstandings had the power to create tension. One evening, as they happened to meet at the corner of the bakery and coffee stand. The sun was low and shadows stretched across the street. She approached him slowly, hoping to bridge the gap, and he looked up with an expression of quiet concern. They stood together for a moment without speaking, the air filled with unspoken questions and the weight of recent days. Finally, she asked softly if everything was all right. He hesitated but nodded, though neither felt fully at ease. The beginning of understanding had appeared. Yet it required patience and care to reach clarity in the following days. Life continued to challenge them. She had a long day at work and returned home exhausted. He faced unexpected news about his personal life that left him unsettled. They missed a few chances to meet, and the gap between them felt larger. Yet, even in distance, the memory of shared laughter and small kindnesses remained. Both realized that connection was not always about presence, but about the intention to return and continue despite obstacles. A small turning point arrived when they unexpectedly met at the market. She was buying fruit, and he was browsing a small stall. Their eyes met, and there was a moment of recognition that carried warmth despite the earlier tension. He spoke first this time, asking about her day in a careful tone. She responded with a soft smile. Conversation flowed slowly at first, cautious yet sincere. They began sharing small details of what had been happening in their lives, gently unpacking the misunderstandings of the previous days. Through these quiet conversations, they began to rebuild trust. She explained her worries and challenges, and he listened with patience. He spoke of his own struggles and fears, admitting the difficulty of expressing them without fear of burdening others. Each word brought a sense of relief. Neither tried to rush the process, understanding that rebuilding connection required time, honesty, and gentle attention. Their bond, though tested, began to feel steady once more over time. They learned to navigate challenges together. Small gestures of care became more frequent, such as offering a hand when carrying something heavy, or sharing a quiet word when one felt stressed. These actions were subtle but meaningful, showing that even amid difficulties, they could support each other. Life's pressures did not disappear, but sharing them made them lighter. The experience deepened their understanding of one another and strengthened the trust that had begun forming one afternoon. A misunderstanding arose from a small comment. She felt he had overlooked something important to her, and he felt she had misjudged his intentions. They both paused, realizing the tension growing between them. Instead of reacting quickly, they chose to step back and reflect. She walked slowly through the park while he sat on a bench nearby, giving space to understand their feelings. It was not an easy decision, but it showed maturity and respect for the bond they shared later. They met again and spoke openly. She expressed her feelings calmly, sharing the disappointment and confusion she had experienced. He responded with honesty, explaining the reasons for his actions and his struggle to communicate under pressure. The conversation was not dramatic or loud, only steady and sincere. In listening and speaking truthfully, they began to repair the gaps that life had created. Both felt relief and a renewed sense of closeness. The weeks following this event were marked by careful attention to one another. Small acts of thoughtfulness, shared smiles, and gentle words became the focus. They began to recognize that challenges were a natural part of life and that facing them, together, could strengthen the bond they shared. Trust grew not in spite of difficulties, but because of how they navigated them with patience. Understanding and care, they also began to notice subtle strengths in each other that had not been fully appreciated before. She admired his resilience in the face of personal struggle and the calmness he brought even when life seemed uncertain. He admired her ability to remain kind and patient despite the demands of her daily life. These observations deepened respect and affection, reinforcing the idea that connection was built not only through shared joy, but also through navigating challenges with empathy one day. As they walked through the park together, they encountered a stray dog. It approached them cautiously, and they paused to offer it some water. Sharing this small act of kindness, they laughed quietly at the dog's timid but curious nature. It was a simple event, yet it carried a sense of shared purpose and enjoyment. Moments like this reminded them that life, with all its difficulties, still held beauty and opportunity for connection of connection. She thought about the small victories and understanding, and the growth they were experiencing together. He reflected on the lessons learned from previous struggles and the importance of honest communication. Both felt a quiet gratitude for the ability to support and be supported. Life had been unpredictable and at times harsh, yet these experiences had created a foundation of resilience, patience, and care between them as the days turned into weeks. The small misunderstandings became less frequent. They had learned to notice early signs of tension and to address them gently. This process was not perfect, but it allowed their connection to grow stronger. They realized that love and companionship were not only about happiness, but also about facing difficulties together and finding stability and support in each other's presence. The third part of their story ended not with resolution of all problems, but with a deeper understanding of what it meant to trust, care, and navigate challenges together. Life remained complicated and unpredictable, yet the bond they shared had become more resilient. They had learned that even ordinary moments carried significance when met with attention, patience, and empathy. Their connection continued to grow, ready to face the next chapters of life together with courage and quiet hope after. The tensions and misunderstandings of the previous weeks, they both realized the importance of clarity and communication. The quiet time apart had allowed reflection and understanding. She thought about what had happened and how she had felt, recognizing that assumptions had caused unnecessary worry. He also reflected, realizing that his silence had been misinterpreted and that openness was necessary for trust to grow. The awareness of each other's feelings became a turning point in their connection. They decided to meet in the park, a place where they had shared many small moments. The early morning air was cool and fresh, carrying the scent of flowers and damp earth. She arrived first and found a quiet bench near the small pond. He walked up slowly, hands in pockets, and offered a small smile. There was no rush, no need for grand gestures. They greeted each other simply, yet the calmness in their presence reflected a deeper understanding. Both felt relief and anticipation for the conversation ahead. The initial words were soft and careful. She spoke of the confusion she had felt, and he listened, fully acknowledging her feelings without interruption. Then he shared his own struggles, explaining why he had seemed distant and the fears he carried about burdening others. The honesty between them created a new level of intimacy. It was not a dramatic declaration of love, but a steady, truthful exchange that reinforced trust and mutual respect. Each word strengthened the foundation they had been building. As they walked slowly along the winding path of the park, they began sharing dreams and aspirations they had not mentioned before. She spoke of small hopes for her family, the desire to find balance in life, and the small joys that made her days meaningful. He spoke of finding purpose after loss, wanting to embrace life with sincerity, and the lessons he had learned about patience and resilience. In listening to each other, they found inspiration and comfort. Discovering that shared understanding created closeness beyond words, the days following this meeting were marked by gentle reconnection. They returned to their routines, but now carried a quiet anticipation of seeing one another. Simple gestures gained significance. A smile across the street, a nod from the corner stand, or a shared laugh at a small accident became moments of quiet joy. Life remained full of responsibilities, yet these moments of connection infused their days with meaning. The bond they had formed through reflection and honest conversation became more resilient and enduring. They began to enjoy activities together that brought subtle joy. Morning walks through quiet streets, watching children play in the park, or visiting the market for small necessities became opportunities to share time and presence. Conversation was natural and unhurried. They found delight in the simple aspects of life, noticing details that had previously gone unnoticed. The shared experience of ordinary life became a source of comfort and connection. Their interactions were human, honest, and grounded in the reality of everyday life. Over time, they started to help each other in practical ways, without expecting recognition. He would carry bags when she was tired, or walk slowly to match her pace. She would bring extra bread or fruit to share and offer encouragement in his moments of stress. These acts were small, but carried meaning, showing care and attention. Both felt the quiet satisfaction of giving and receiving without the need for words. Life's ordinary tasks became opportunities for shared presence and mutual support. One evening, the sky painted in soft shades of orange and pink, they found a quiet spot by the pond. They watched the reflections on the water and spoke of memories from childhood. She described the games she used to play and the small adventures of her youth. He spoke of lessons learned and simple joys he had experienced. Listening to each other, they felt a deeper connection. The past was acknowledged and the present shared, creating a bridge toward a hopeful future. There was a sense that the bond they were nurturing was both rare and precious. As weeks passed, they found themselves confiding in one another about worries and small fears. She spoke of moments of exhaustion and concern for her family. He shared uncertainties about his path and the challenges of facing life alone. Each admission was met with patience and understanding. They offered support without judgment and comfort without pressure. This dynamic strengthened the sense of trust and mutual care. Life had taught them caution, yet they were learning to open gradually and safely to the possibility of shared vulnerability. They began to notice the small habits and details that made each other unique. She noticed how he smiled when he was deep in thought, how his presence felt steady and calming. He noticed the gentle way she handled difficult situations, her ability to listen and empathize, and the small moments of joy she found in ordinary things. Observing these traits created admiration and affection that grew quietly but surely. They realized that the beauty of connection lay not in grand gestures, but in understanding. Attention and Karen, a day when a sudden shower passed through the town. They ran to a small, sheltered area and laughed at being caught in the rain. They watched people rushing by and the drops sliding down the windows of nearby shops. In that moment, their laughter felt free and effortless. Sharing simple joys without expectation became a theme in their relationship. They discovered that happiness could be found in ordinary moments, when shared with someone who understood and valued them even in silence. They found comfort in each other's presence, sitting together on benches, watching people pass, or simply walking quietly through the streets. They felt a connection that did not require constant conversation. The act of being together became a form of reassurance. They learned that love and companionship were not always loud or dramatic, but could be found in quiet, steady presence, and mutual support. These experiences became the foundation of a lasting connection through reflection and continued care. They both grew individually and together. She felt more confident and supported in facing life's challenges. He felt a renewed sense of hope and purpose in his journey. Their shared experiences and understanding reinforced the importance of patience, empathy, and honesty. Life's difficulties did not vanish, but became more manageable when faced together. They realized that shared growth and mutual support were essential elements of meaningful connection. One evening, as the town settled into the calm of night, they walked slowly through the streets. Noticing lights reflected on puddles from a recent rain, they spoke of future plans, small hopes, and dreams they wished to pursue. Conversation flowed naturally, interspersed with quiet reflection. Each step together strengthened their bond and reinforced the sense of shared purpose. The ordinary world around them became a stage for their growing. Understanding and connection, they began to recognize the importance of celebrating small victories together. Completing tasks, overcoming challenges, or simply experiencing a moment of joy became opportunities to share gratitude. They learned that acknowledgement and appreciation, even in minor things, nurtured affection and connection. Life's ordinary rhythm became intertwined with their shared presence. Creating a sense of harmony and stability in these moments, they discovered the beauty of simplicity. Love and connection did not need to be extravagant or dramatic. It could thrive in quiet walks, shared smiles, attentive listening, and small gestures of care. Through patience, honesty, and steady presence, they built a bond resilient enough to face ordinary life and extraordinary moments alike. Each day added depth, understanding, and warmth to the relationship. And so, the fourth part of their story unfolded. It was marked not by dramatic declarations, but by gentle reconnection, understanding, and mutual growth. Through reflection, honest conversation, and shared experiences, they nurtured a bond that was patient, steady, and human. Life's ordinary moments became meaningful, creating a foundation for the love that would continue to grow and flourish in the days ahead. The days turned into weeks, and the bond they shared grew stronger with each small interaction. They had learned to navigate the challenges life had brought them. The quiet understanding between them became a source of comfort. Life was still filled with responsibilities, unexpected difficulties, and moments of uncertainty. Yet, their connection made the ordinary feel brighter and more meaningful. They discovered that love could be steady and enduring when built on trust, care, and shared present siege morning. She walked through the streets with a sense of calm, knowing that he might be nearby. Even brief encounters, an exchanged glance, a shared smile, a small conversation brought warmth and reassurance. He too felt a sense of anticipation and comfort, noticing her presence in familiar corners of the town. The rhythm of their days had become intertwined, their interactions forming a quiet continuity that filled them with joy and stability. Ordinary routines became opportunities for connection and shared experience. They began to spend more time together intentionally, exploring parts of the town they had not noticed before. Simple walks through quiet streets, visiting small markets, and watching children play in the park became opportunities to share stories, dreams, and laughter. These shared moments allowed them to observe and appreciate the small details about each other. The way she smiled at a passing dog, the way he paused to help someone in need, the gentleness in their gestures toward others. These observations deepened affection and admiration, creating a sense of intimacy that grew steadily over time. One afternoon, they found a quiet spot near a small fountain. They sat together in comfortable silence, watching water ripple across the surface. The world around them moved at its usual pace, but in that moment, time felt slower. She spoke softly of her hopes for the future, simple aspirations to find balance, joy, and purpose in everyday life. He shared his desire to embrace life fully, to carry lessons from the past while moving forward with kindness and patience. The conversation flowed naturally, punctuated by quiet reflection and understanding. As their relationship deepened, they began to support each other in practical ways. He would offer to help carry heavy items when she seemed tired, or accompany her on errands that would otherwise feel burdensome. She would bring small comforts, a warm drink or a favorite snack, and offer words of encouragement when he faced moments of doubt. These acts were simple and understated, yet they carried great significance. They demonstrated attentiveness, care, and a willingness to be present for one another in everyday life, even in moments of silence. They found reassurance in each other's presence. Sitting on a bench in the park, walking slowly through quiet streets, or pausing to watch the sunset, they felt a quiet intimacy that required no words. It was in these ordinary experiences that they discovered the depth of their connection. They learned that companionship and love were not always expressed through dramatic gestures or declarations, but through steady presence, mutual respect, and shared attention to life's small details. They also celebrated small victories together. Whether it was completing a challenging task, overcoming a personal worry, or simply sharing a joyful moment. Each success, however minor, became an opportunity to express appreciation and support. These moments reinforced the value of their bond and reminded them that life's ordinary rhythm could be filled with meaning when all shared with someone who truly cared. They discovered that love could be nurturing, sustaining, and quiet, yet powerful in its consistency. One evening, as the town settled into the calm of dusk, they walked along familiar streets. Noticing lights reflecting on puddles from a recent rain, conversation flowed naturally, interspersed with pauses for quiet reflection. They spoke of past experiences, present hopes, and the lessons they had learned along the way. The ordinary world around them became a backdrop for shared growth, understanding, and deepening connection. Each step together reinforced the sense of partnership and trust that had formed. They began to plan simple experiences together, small outings that allowed them to enjoy one another's company without pressure or expectation. Visiting a quiet cafe, attending a community event, or simply walking along a familiar street became opportunities to create shared memories. These experiences strengthened their bond, providing moments of joy and connection in the midst of life's routine challenges. They discovered that happiness could be found in ordinary moments when experienced together with care and attention. Through all these experiences, they nurtured a sense of mutual understanding and respect. She admired his patience, resilience, and gentle presence. He appreciated her kindness, thoughtfulness, and ability to find joy in small moments. Their admiration for each other grew quietly, rooted in observation, shared experiences, and consistent care. They discovered that love was not only about emotion, but also about respect, attentiveness, and appreciation for one another's character. They continued to support each other through challenges. When difficult situations arose, they approached them together, offering practical help, encouragement, and empathy. They had learned from past misunderstandings and now communicated openly, listening carefully to each other's perspectives. This approach allowed them to face life's difficulties with a sense of shared strength and resilience. Their bond became a source of stability and reassurance, a reminder that they were not alone in navigating life's uncertainties over time. Their connection became a natural part of daily life. The anticipation of seeing one another, the small shared experiences, and the quiet support formed a rhythm that felt comforting and enduring. Life remained unpredictable and filled with responsibilities, yet they faced it together, finding joy in ordinary moments and meaning in shared presence. They discovered that love could be patient, gentle, and steady, providing a foundation for hope and fulfillment. One afternoon, they sat together on a quiet bench, watching the sunlight dance on leaves and listening to the distant sounds of life in the town. Conversation turned to reflections on their journey together, the moments of laughter, shared support, challenges faced, and trust rebuilt. They realized that the bond they had formed was rare and precious, built through patience, understanding, and care. Each day, they had chosen to be present for one another, creating a connection that could endure life's uncertainties. They also began to recognize the beauty and the simplicity of their relationship. There were no dramatic declarations or grand gestures, only consistent attention, care, and shared presence. They learned to celebrate ordinary moments, finding joy in shared laughter, quiet reflection, and small acts of kindness. The ordinary rhythm of life became intertwined with their growing affection, creating a sense of harmony and contentment. Each day added depth, warmth, and meaning to their relationship. As weeks turned into months, their bond solidified. They faced life's challenges with renewed confidence, knowing that they had each other's support. Small conflicts, misunderstandings, and moments of stress were handled with patience and open communication. They had learned that love was not only about emotion, but also about understanding, reliability, and consistent care. Their connection provided a foundation for stability, resilience, and shared joy. Evenings became moments of reflection and gratitude. They spoke softly of hopes, dreams, and lessons learned. They acknowledged the value of their shared experiences, appreciating both the ordinary and extraordinary moments. The presence of one another became a source of comfort and inspiration, reminding them that connection, trust, and care were the true foundations of lasting love. Each interaction strengthened the bond that had grown quietly but steadily through these ongoing experiences. They discovered the enduring power of companionship and shared presence. Life continued with its ordinary challenges, yet the love and understanding they nurtured provided a sense of peace and fulfillment. They realized that meaningful connection was built through consistent attention, empathy, and care, and that love could thrive in the quiet. Steady moments of everyday life, the story of their journey concluded not with dramatic declarations or extraordinary events, but with a quiet, profound understanding of one another. They had learned to navigate challenges, communicate openly, support each other, and celebrate ordinary moments. Their bond had grown resilient and enduring, built on trust, patience, and shared presence. The ordinary world around them became a canvas for connection, understanding, and love. And so the final part of their story celebrated the beauty of simple, steady, and human connection. It was a story of two people learning to care, trust, and share life together. The love they nurtured was patient, gentle, and enduring, formed through ordinary moments, thoughtful gestures, and quiet understanding. Life remained unpredictable, yet they faced it together, finding meaning, comfort, and joy in the presence of each other, leaving a lasting impression of hope, warmth, and the extraordinary nature of ordinary love. Life did not stop testing them even after everything they had learned together. New responsibilities appeared quietly and demanded attention. Work became heavier for her, and family needs required more time and energy. For him, new decisions about the future began to surface, bringing both hope and uncertainty. They did not panic or pull away. Instead, they leaned into what they had built together, choosing patience and honesty over fear. Mornings it became slower and more thoughtful. She woke earlier to prepare for long days, and he adjusted his routine so he could walk part of the way with her when possible. These short walks were simple, yet meaningful. They spoke about the plans for the day, or sometimes walked in silence, enjoying the calm before life grew loud. Even when time was short, the presence of the other gave strength and reassurance. There were days when exhaustion showed clearly on her face. On those days, he listened more and spoke less, offering support through attention rather than advice. There were also days when he felt uncertain about his direction and purpose. She reminded him gently of his progress and the value he carried. These exchanges were not dramatic but deeply human. They showed how care could exist quietly without needing to be announced, One afternoon, she faced an unexpected challenge at work that left her overwhelmed. She tried to stay strong, but the weight of responsibility pressed heavily on her. When they met later that day, she spoke slowly, sharing what had happened. He listened fully and walked beside her through the streets. He did not try to solve everything. His steady presence and calm understanding helped her breathe more easily. It reminded her that she did not have to face everything alone. Return when he received news that stirred old fears and doubts, she became his anchor. She noticed the change in his voice and the way he moved more slowly. She asked gentle questions and allowed him space to speak when ready. When words came, they were met with patience and care. Through these moments, they learned that support is not about fixing problems, but about standing together through them. They began to see their connection reflected in small choices. Choosing to wait, choosing to listen, choosing to understand before reacting. These choices shaped the way they faced life. Even disagreements were handled differently now. When tension arose, they paused, took space if needed, and returned with clarity. This approach strengthened trust and prevented small issues from growing into distances. Time passed, they became more involved in each other's lives. She met people important to him, and he met those who mattered to her. These interactions were gentle and respectful. They observed each other in different settings and felt proud of the kindness and humility they saw. The way they treated others deepened admiration and confirmed the values they shared. They also found joy in creating small traditions. A certain day of the week became time for a walk or shared meal. A familiar spot in the park became a place for reflection. These habits created stability and comfort. Life felt less unpredictable when shared moments were something they could count on. The simplicity of these traditions grounded them during busy or uncertain times. One evening, they sat together, all watching the sky change colors. The day had been long and tiring, yet the quiet moment brought peace. They spoke about how far they had come and the lessons learned along the way. There was gratitude in their voices and calm in their posture. They understood that growth did not mean perfection, but awareness and effort. Being together had taught them both patience and compassion. They noticed how much they had changed individually as well. She felt stronger and more confident in facing challenges. He felt more open and hopeful about the future. Their connection had not replaced personal growth, but supported it. They encouraged each other to pursue goals while staying connected. This balance became one of the strongest parts of their bond. There were moments when life felt overwhelming again. Bills, deadlines, responsibilities, and unexpected events tested their energy. Yet even in those moments, they found comfort in small gestures. A note left quietly, a shared look across a room, a simple walk after a long day. These gestures reminded them of the steady foundation beneath everything else. They learned that love did not remove hardship, but softened its edges. It made heavy days more bearable and joyful days more meaningful. The presence of someone who cared deeply created courage to keep going. Together, they built a rhythm that felt real and sustainable. There was no pressure to be perfect, only a commitment to remain present, and honest. As seasons changed, they adjusted together. New routines replaced old ones and expectations shifted. They talked openly about these changes and allowed flexibility. This openness prevented resentment and allowed growth. They understood that life would continue to evolve, and their bond needed space to do the same. One quiet afternoon, they walked through familiar streets. Noticing how much had changed since they first met, some shops were gone and new ones had appeared. Yet the feeling between them remained steady. They realized that while the world could change, the values they shared kept them grounded. This realization brought a deep sense of peace. They began to look ahead, not with fear, but with curiosity. Plans were discussed gently, without pressure. Possibilities were considered with care. They did not rush toward outcomes, but focused on the present, knowing the future would unfold in its own time. This mindset reduced anxiety and strengthened trust. Through all of this, they remained attentive to one another, listening, adjusting, supporting. These actions became second nature. Love was no longer just a feeling, but a practice woven into daily life. It showed up in choices, tone, and patience. It was steady and reliable. The story continued without grand endings or dramatic turns. It flowed like real life, full of effort, learning, rest, and renewal. They understood that what they shared was rare, not because it was perfect, but because it was nurtured with intention. Their bond stood as proof that ordinary people could create something meaningful through care and consistency in this stage of their journey. They no longer questioned the value of what they had built. They saw it in the way they faced the world together. Calm, strong, connected. Life would continue to challenge them, but they were ready. Not because everything was certain, but because they were no longer alone.